Tokyo never truly sleeps. But in the quiet hours after midnight, when the rain turns the city into a blur of light and shadow, some windows reflect more than they should. This is the story of room 703 in Meguro. A cheap apartment, a lonely student, and a single handprint that should never have reappeared. Because in Tokyo's endless rain, the dead don't knock to be let in. They knock to remind you they never left. Chapter 1. The 7th Floor Room. Autumn, 2017. Tokyo was drenched in endless drizzle. Yuki, a third-year student at Musashino Art University, decided to move out of her shared dorm to live alone. She wanted a quiet place to finish her graduation project. After days of searching, she found a surprisingly cheap apartment in Meguro, on the 7th floor of an aging concrete building streaked with moss and rust. The rent was half of what similar rooms cost nearby. When she came to see it, the landlady, a woman in her 60s with a soft but strangely cold voice, said quietly, "Greater than, if you're not afraid of being alone. This place is very quiet." Her eyes shifted away as she spoke, a brief flicker of something like hesitation or warning. But Yuki didn't care. She was a broke student, and the room felt just right. Room 703 was tiny, about 18 square meters. The wooden floor sank slightly under her feet, and the wallpaper had yellowed with age. But the large window facing the narrow alley caught her attention. Soft orange light from a ramen shop sign below painted the room in a strange warmth. When she opened the window, a gust of cold air slipped inside, carrying the scent of wet metal and rain. She cleaned late into the night, humming softly to herself. While wiping the glass, she froze. There was a wet handprint on the inside of the window. 5 long fingers, thin and delicate, drops of water trailing down like diluted blood. "Probably just condensation," she muttered, and wiped it away. It vanished instantly. She pulled the curtain shut, turned off the light, and went to bed. The rain didn't stop until morning. When Yuki woke up and drew the curtains open, the same handprint had returned, in the exact same place. Only this time, it was darker, sharper, as if someone had pressed their hand there from inside, while she was sleeping. Outside, Tokyo's rain fell ceaselessly. The narrow alley below was empty, silent, glistening faintly under the streetlight. No one was there. Only that cold, lonely handprint on the glass, waiting patiently for someone to notice it. Chapter 2. The sound from the glass. The second night in the new apartment. The wind slipped through the gaps in the window frame, carrying damp air that clung to Yuki's skin. She lay on the narrow bed beside the wall, the flickering orange glow from the ramen shop's sign painting ripples of light across the ceiling. She couldn't sleep. Something about this place felt alive. At exactly 2 a.m., a faint tapping sound came from the window. Tap, tap, tap. 3 slow knocks, steady, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Yuki opened her eyes, holding her breath. Maybe it was the rain, she told herself, but when she listened closely, she realized the rain had stopped hours ago. The air was heavy and still. Then, tap, tap, again, but closer this time, as if it came from inside the glass. Her heart pounded. She pulled the blanket up to her chin, staring into the darkness. The neon light outside flickered, flashing shadows across the walls. Slowly, she got up and walked toward the window. Each step creaked on the warped wooden floor. When she reached the curtain, the sound stopped. She hesitated for a long moment before pulling the curtain aside. No one. Only the narrow, rain-soaked alley below, empty, silent. But the handprint was back. Water dripped down from its fingertips, forming streaks that crawled like tears along the glass. Yuki's hands trembled. She grabbed her phone, switched on the camera, and recorded the window. Nothing moved. She exhaled shakily, lowered the phone, and froze. On the screen, in the reflection of the glass, a pale face appeared behind her. The features were blurred, but the shape of the eyes, the lips, unmistakable. Someone was there. She paused the video and replayed it, zooming in on the reflection. The face flickered faintly, lips moving in silence. When she slowed the footage down, she could almost read the motion of the mouth. It was calling her name. Greater than Yuki? Her phone went dark. At the same instant, the room light flickered violently and went out. For a few seconds, everything was drowned in blackness. Only the sound of her heartbeat and the faint tap, tap, tap on the glass remained. It was gentle now, almost patient, like someone trying to talk to her through a wall. Yuki didn't dare move. But as she turned away, she saw in the corner of her eye. Her reflection in the window was still looking at her, even though she had turned around. Chapter 3. The Neighbor Upstairs. After that night, Yuki barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the soft tapping on the window, followed by a faint whisper calling her name. But when she turned on the lights, the room was silent, as if nothing had happened. Still, the handprint always returned, darker each morning, its edges sharper, like it had been pressed there again and again. One gloomy afternoon, while taking out her trash, Yuki met an old woman from the 8th floor, just above her unit. The woman wore a faded dark kimono, her silver hair neatly tied, eyes clouded but oddly sharp when she looked at Yuki. She stopped and asked softly, "Greater than, you live in room 703, don't you?" Yuki smiled politely. "Yes, I just moved in last week." The old woman's expression froze for a moment. Her eyes darted away, and her voice trembled slightly. "Greater than, that room, is still being rented?" Yuki frowned. "Yes, is there something wrong with it?" The old woman hesitated, her thin lips pressing tightly together. She stared at the wall for a long while before speaking again. "Greater than, there used to be a girl living there. A university student, like you. She died one rainy night." A chill ran through Yuki's spine. "Greater than, died? You mean, she killed herself?" The woman shook her head slowly. "Greater than, no one knows. They found her body on the 2nd floor canopy, right below your window. But when the police came, they said, the window was locked from the inside." The hallway grew colder. The fluorescent light above them flickered once, buzzing softly. "Greater than, before she died," the old woman continued, lowering her voice, "some people said she'd been talking to someone. That she saw a face on the other side of the glass every night it rained." Yuki's hands tightened around the trash bag. Her throat felt dry. "Greater than, the last thing she left behind," the woman said, "was a single handprint on the window. They cleaned it, but it always came back." Yuki didn't know what to say. The woman looked directly into her eyes, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Greater than, if you ever hear someone calling your name, don't answer. And whatever you do, don't open the curtain on a rainy night." Her words echoed down the empty corridor. The wind howled faintly through the stairwell, making the lights flicker again. The old woman turned and shuffled away, her slippers dragging softly across the floor. Yuki stood there for a long time, unable to move. Just before she went back inside, she noticed something strange on the wall near the stairwell, a long wet streak shaped like a handprint. Water dripping from its fingertips, as if someone had just touched it, and vanished. Chapter 4. The Cold Dream. That night, the rain fell harder than ever. Each drop struck the glass like the tapping of fingernails, soft, rhythmic, unending. The faint yellow glow from the streetlight outside turned the walls of room 703 a sickly gray. Yuki lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the old woman's warning. "Greater than, if you hear someone calling your name, don't answer." The wind whistled through the cracks of the old window. Then, a faint click. The sound of a lock being moved. Yuki sat up instantly, heart pounding. She turned on the light. Everything was still. The window was closed. But there, once again, the handprint. Only this time, there were two of them. The second one smaller, clearer, freshly pressed. Water dripped slowly down the glass, forming trails that merged and fell like silent tears. She picked up a towel, intending to wipe them away. But the moment the towel touched the surface, the prints spread wider, as if her touch had awakened them. The water traced the outline of a figure behind the glass, faint, human-shaped. Yuki dropped the towel and backed away, her breath shaking. She finally crawled under the blanket and tried to sleep. but the steady rhythm of the rain began to blend with another sound. A whisper. She couldn't make out the words, only that it came from outside the window. Eventually, exhaustion pulled her into sleep. But in her dream, she was standing in the alley below, soaked by the cold rain. When she looked up, she saw her own window 7 floors above, glowing faintly. Behind the glass, someone was standing there, a girl wearing her clothes, with her hair dripping wet. It was her. Her own face, pale and expressionless, stared back from the window. The other Yuki raised a trembling hand and pressed it against the glass. At the same moment, Yuki, the one in the alley, felt a cold hand touch her shoulder from behind. It was freezing. The chill spread down her spine like ice melting beneath her skin. She turned around, no one. Only a thin mist drifting past her. Then, close to her ear, a whisper so clear it made her blood freeze. Greater than, "Why are you standing out there?" She screamed and woke up. The room was pitch black. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Sweat soaked her shirt. She reached for her shoulder, her skin was wet, and she could feel the outline of a handprint, cold as if carved in ice. Yuki turned on the light. The handprints on the window were gone. But in the fog of condensation left behind, she could just barely make out 3 blurred words. Greater than, "Your turn now." Chapter 5. The Room Below. 3 nights passed after that dream, yet Yuki couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was always standing just beyond the window. Every morning, the handprints returned, overlapping, changing shape, growing darker. She noticed now that there were 2 sets, one small, one large, as if 2 people pressed their hands against the glass together. Her body was exhausted. Dark circles deepened under her eyes. Friends at university asked if she was all right, but she only forced a smile. Inside, fear and curiosity twisted together. Who was Arai Miyu? And why did her name, whispered by the old woman upstairs, feel so strangely familiar? One gray afternoon, Yuki decided to visit the building's management office on the ground floor. The man behind the desk, in his late 40s, looked half asleep, his glasses smudged and his voice dull. "Greater than, room 703? Yes, that's yours, right?" "Yes, I wanted to ask, has anything ever happened there?" The man blinked, uneasy. "Greater than, why do you ask?" Yuki hesitated, then said, "Greater than, someone told me a student once died there." The man sighed, eyes darting away. "Greater than, that was a long time ago. An accident, the girl fell from the 7th floor. The police called it a suicide." A cold wave rippled through Yuki. "Greater than, what was her name?" He hesitated, then muttered, "Greater than, Arai Miyu." Yuki's pulse stopped for a moment. The name echoed inside her like a bell struck underwater. She thanked him and hurried back to her apartment, hands trembling as she pulled out her phone. Typing Arai Miyu Meguro 2013 into the search bar, she found an old article. "Greater than, university student falls from 7th floor, suspected suicide. No signs of struggle, window was locked from inside." There was a photo. A girl with long dark hair and a faint smile. Yuki froze. The girl looked exactly like her. Same eyes, same face, same soft curve of the lips, except Miyu's eyes in the photo were deeper. Emptier, as if they were staring straight at her through the screen. The phone slipped from Yuki's hand, clattering onto the floor. A glass of water on her desk tipped over, rolling toward the window. When she reached for it, she saw them, 3 handprints on the glass. 2 familiar ones, and a third one, fresh, appearing before her eyes, still dripping. Yuki stumbled back, her breath quick and shallow. The air grew colder, thicker, hard to breathe. Outside, rain began to fall again, a slow, heavy rain that seemed to echo the rhythm of a heartbeat. Through the window, the reflection shimmered, warped by water and shadow. And for just an instant, Yuki thought she saw someone standing behind her reflection, watching. Then came the sound. That soft, patient tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Her name followed, drawn out through the rain. "Greater than, you, Ki?" The voice was almost tender. Almost human. But it was coming from inside the room. Chapter 6. The Second Handprint. Ever since she learned the dead girl's name, Arai Miyu, Yuki's mind had become a tangle of obsession and dread. Whenever she closed her eyes, she saw that photo again, the faint smile, the dark eyes, the face that could have been her own. Days bled into nights. The rain returned, steady and endless. And now, it wasn't just the nights that frightened her, the sounds, the whispers, the tapping, they began during the day, too. She would hear footsteps above her, though the apartment above was supposed to be empty. Soft murmurs came from the wall, like someone talking just beyond it. Sometimes, she even heard a short, childlike giggle, vanishing the moment she froze to listen. Then, one cold evening, it happened again. While closing the window, she saw it, the handprints. 2 of them. The first, small, thin-fingered, the one that had always been there. And next to it, a larger one, the fingers long, almost skeletal, the watery streaks trailing down like blood diluted in rain. They overlapped slightly, palm to palm, as if 2 people were holding hands through the glass. Yuki's knees went weak. She raised her phone to take a photo, but when the camera flash went off, she saw something that made her blood turn to ice. A tall, shadowy figure standing behind the window, reflected in the glass. Not outside. Inside. She dropped the phone. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed like a gunshot in the tiny room. Then came the tapping. Slow at first. Tap, tap, tap. Then faster. Tap, tap, tap. Her breath hitched. She screamed. Greater than, stop it. Please, just stop. And the sound stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, from the other side of the room, a low voice, rough, deep, and wet, whispered. Greater than, why are you here? Yuki spun around. No one. But the air behind her shimmered slightly, as though someone invisible had just moved through it. The light flickered once, twice, then died. Darkness swallowed the room. The only light came from her phone, lying face up on the floor. Its dim glow cast a reflection on the curtain. 2 silhouettes. One small, one tall. Both standing still, side by side, right behind the fabric. Yuki froze, too afraid to move. Her hand brushed against something cold, wet. She looked down. A handprint had appeared on her arm. Large, clear, fresh. When the light flicked back on, there was no one there. But a trail of wet footprints now stretched from the window, straight across the floor, ending at the bathroom mirror. And in that mirror, though Yuki stood completely still, her reflection was not. Chapter 7. The voice calling her name. After the night she saw the man in the mirror, Yuki stopped sleeping. The apartment had changed. It no longer felt like her home, more like a mouth, slowly swallowing her whole. Every time she turned off the light, the whispers began. At first, they were faint, like the wind slipping under the door. Then they formed words. Soft, broken words. Greater than, Yuki? Her name. Always her name. Whispered again and again, fragile as breath. She would wake up trembling, clutching the blanket around her. The voice came from the walls, from the floor, from inside the glass. When she switched on the light, silence. But she knew, something was listening. One night, around 3 a.m., the voice changed. It was no longer a whisper, but a soft, hoarse murmur, closer. Greater than, Yuki, open the window. She sat up, heart hammering. The air was heavy, thick with humidity. The faint smell of iron filled the room. Greater than, open it, please. It was gentle, almost pleading. But something inside her, instinct, screamed no. She shook her head, whispering back, go away. The voice grew sharper. Greater than, open it, Yuki. Then, bang, the window rattled violently. Glass quivered in its frame, the metal handle trembling. Yuki jumped to her feet, screaming. Greater than, stop, leave me alone. The window shook harder. Then came the sound of scratching, long, slow scratches that scraped through her skull. She grabbed her phone and pointed the camera toward the window. In the reflection of the screen, she saw a face pressed against the glass, white as paper. Lips stretched into an impossible grin, eyes black and sunken. It was mouthing her name. Greater than you, Ki? No sound came out, but she could feel it, the vibration in the air, the whisper crawling inside her chest. She dropped the phone, her whole body shaking. Silence. Then, tap, tap, tap. 3 light knocks. Greater than, if you won't open, the voice said softly. Now behind her ear. Then I'll come in another way. Yuki froze. The blanket slid from her trembling hands. Something wet brushed against her foot, cold, slimy, like the touch of a hand that had been soaking in water too long. She looked down. Nothing. Only a single wet handprint on the floorboards beside her bed. The rain started again, harder this time, hammering the window like frantic fingers. Yuki closed her eyes, tears spilling over, whispering to herself. Greater than, it's not real, it's not real. But over the rain, she could still hear it. A voice, her own voice, whispering back, from somewhere in the darkness. Greater than, then who's the one calling you? Yuki?
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 8. The Cameraman. By the time a week had passed, Yuki was no longer sure what was real. She barely ate, barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard her name being whispered in the dark, and when she opened them, the handprints were always waiting for her. Desperate, she called the only person she trusted, Kenta, her classmate and closest friend. Kenta was calm, practical, the type to laugh at ghost stories. When she told him everything, the voices, the dreams, the windows, he smiled faintly and said, Greater than, you've been working too hard. Maybe you're just exhausted. Yuki shook her head, tears welling up. Greater than, it's not in my head. Kenta, I've seen it, there's someone in the glass. He hesitated, then sighed. Greater than, okay, I'll come tonight. We'll set up a camera and see what's really going on. That evening, the two sat together in the small, dimly lit apartment. Rain fell outside again, a slow, heavy drizzle that seemed to follow Yuki everywhere. Kenta placed a video camera on a tripod, facing the window. The red recording light blinked softly. Greater than, if there's something weird, we'll catch it, he said. Yuki tried to smile, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Hours passed. They talked to stay awake, the television murmuring in the background. At 1 a.m., the rain intensified. The window began to rattle slightly in its frame. Kenta frowned. Greater than, old building. Wind gets in easy. Then it happened. 3 knocks. Soft, deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. Both of them froze. Kenta stood up, moved closer to the window. Greater than, probably the wind, he whispered. But as he approached, the tapping stopped, and a faint shape appeared on the glass. A handprint. Clear, perfect, and pressed from the inside. Yuki gasped. Greater than, it's happening again. Kenta turned back to her, his voice shaking for the first time. Greater than, stay there. Don't move. He pointed the camera at the window, zooming in. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, in the corner of the frame, a shadow passed behind the curtain. Kenta spun around. Yuki? She was still sitting on the floor. They both looked at the curtain. It wasn't moving. He rewound the footage, his hands trembling. Frame by frame, the image flickered, and then they saw it. Right before the shadow appeared, a second handprint pressed itself against the glass, fingers long and dripping. Then a third. Then, nothing. Kenta's face went pale. Greater than, what the hell was that? The camera's red light blinked out. Power gone. And then, a voice. Low, male. From somewhere in the room. Greater than, don't delete it. Kenta froze, staring at the dark screen. Behind him, for an instant, Yuki saw a tall figure reflected in the glass, just behind his shoulder. She screamed. He turned, but the figure was gone. The only sound was the rain hammering against the cracked window. They didn't speak again until morning. When dawn came, Kenta packed up the camera, eyes sunken, and muttered, "Greater than, I'll check the footage at home. You should rest." He left without another word. That night, Yuki tried to call him. No answer. She called again and again, nothing. By morning, she looked up from her bed and froze. On the window, there were now 3 handprints. 2 small ones she already knew. And 1 large one, fresh, still dripping water. Chapter 9. The mirror in the bathroom. Since the night Kenta disappeared, the apartment no longer felt human. The sounds were everywhere now, footsteps when she was awake, whispers when she wasn't, and the faint laughter of a child that died in her throat whenever Yuki turned her head. She locked the door. She shut every curtain. She lit a single candle for comfort, but the tiny flame only made the shadows move. The next evening she went to wash her face, hoping cold water would clear the fog in her mind. She bent over the sink, splashed her cheeks, and lifted her head. Her reflection didn't move. For a second she froze. Then she smiled nervously at the mirror. But the reflection did not smile back. It just stood there, eyes wide open, lips trembling as though whispering something Yuki could not hear. She stepped closer. Drops of water slid down the mirror with a slow tch, tch, tch that echoed like a clock counting seconds. Then, from inside the mirror, a pale hand appeared on the shoulder of her reflection, thin, wrinkled, and dripping wet. The fingers tightened. Yuki screamed and spun around. Nothing. But when she touched her own shoulder, her skin was damp and cold. She stumbled out of the bathroom, shaking, pressing her back to the wall. The candlelight flickered, reflecting faintly on the mirror through the half-open door. And inside that mirror, her reflection was still there, even though she was no longer in front of it. It slowly raised its head. Its mouth stretched into a crooked smile. A single drop of blood slid from the corner of its lips and hit the floor. The candle hissed and went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Then came the knocking, soft at first, like fingertips against glass, steady, patient, the same rhythm she had heard every night. Yuki covered her ears, crouching down, whispering, "Stop, stop?" But the voice came from inside her head this time, a woman's voice. Calm and intimate. Greater than, "Let me borrow your face, just for a little while." She screamed and hurled her phone at the mirror. Glass exploded, shards scattering like ice. For an instant, lightning flashed through the window, and in that light, Yuki saw a soaked woman crawling out of the broken mirror. Hair hanging like seaweed, eyes hollow, hands leaving trails of water across the floor. When Yuki opened her eyes again, it was morning. The mirror was shattered, the floor covered with puddles. But the most horrifying part was the reflections. Each shard still showed her face. Yet none of them moved with her. Every fragment watched her with lifeless eyes. And on each broken piece of glass, faint but unmistakable, was a small wet handprint, stained with blood. Chapter 10. The Empty Building. After the mirror shattered, Yuki no longer trusted her own eyes. She taped paper over every reflective surface, even the window glass. She avoided turning on lights, avoided sound, yet somehow, the silence was louder than ever. At first, she thought it was only her room that was cursed. But one morning, while walking down the corridor to throw away her trash, she realized something was wrong. The building was empty. No doors opening, no televisions murmuring, no footsteps above or below. The entire hallway stretched before her like the inside of a dead body, damp, stale, and silent. When she first moved in, the place had been full of life. Now, the nameplates beside the doors were all blank. Dust lay thick on doormats, and the faint odor of mildew and stagnant water filled the air. Yuki pressed her ear to a nearby door. Nothing. She tried another. The metal handle was icy cold. Then she noticed something. A line of water running out from under the door, dripping slowly across the hallway tiles. Her stomach turned. She bent down. The puddle smelled faintly metallic, the smell of rust or blood. That night, she lay awake, thinking of the old woman on the 8th floor. Maybe she knew more. Gathering her courage, Yuki went upstairs and knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Still nothing, except for a faint sound from inside, like water trickling. "Oba-san?" she whispered. Something moved behind the door, soft, slow, dragging. Then silence. When she bent down to look under the door, a drop of dark water slid out, spreading into the shape of a handprint before fading into the wood. Yuki stumbled backward, heart racing. She turned and ran down the hallway, but as she passed the stairwell, she felt eyes watching her. When she looked up, she saw a woman in white standing on the balcony of the 8th floor. Hair hanging wet, head tilted slightly. Lightning flashed. And for an instant, Yuki saw the woman's face. It was Miyu. The next second, she was gone, only a red umbrella swaying from the railing, spinning slowly in the wind. When Yuki returned to her apartment, the air felt heavier. She opened the windows slightly to breathe, and gagged. The wind brought with it the smell of rot, of water long trapped in pipes with something dead inside. Looking down, she saw a dark figure standing in the narrow alley, staring straight up at her. It didn't move. It didn't blink. But its outline, the shoulders, the height, looked familiar. "Kenta," she whispered. The figure raised one arm. Slowly. Deliberately. Then pressed its palm against its own chest, and vanished into the rain. When she turned back to the room, she froze. On the window, there was a fourth handprint, larger than the rest. Deep and wet, the water still dripping down like veins. Chapter 11, The Watcher. By now, Yuki was living in constant twilight, never turning off the lights. Never sleeping more than a few minutes at a time. She tried to convince herself that everything she saw was a hallucination. That if she just held on long enough, the world would steady again. Then, one morning, there was a knock at her door. 3 short raps. Yuki froze, her blood turned cold. But when she looked through the peephole, it was just a man in a security uniform. He looked to be in his 60s, short and tired looking, his uniform slightly damp from the drizzle outside. His name tag read Ishikawa. "Greater than, you're the tenant in room 703, right?" he asked. "Yes," Yuki replied cautiously. He glanced behind her into the dark room. "Greater than, I need to tell you something strange. I thought you should know." Yuki hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. The guard entered slowly, his eyes scanning the walls, the ceiling, and finally the taped-up window. His face twitched. "Greater than, last week," he began. "I was reviewing the building's security footage. The camera facing the courtyard caught something odd." "What do you mean?" Yuki asked. He lowered his voice. "Greater than, it recorded a woman standing outside your window. The 7th floor, in the rain." Yuki's breath caught in her throat. "Greater than, that's impossible. There's no balcony, nowhere to stand." Ishikawa nodded. "Greater than, exactly. She just stood there, motionless. I watched for over an hour, she never moved. Then, at 3:07 a.m., she vanished. Just disappeared." He rubbed his face, shaking his head. "Greater than, I thought it was a glitch. But when I looked closer, I saw her face clearly. She looked like..." He hesitated, his eyes flicked to Yuki. "Greater than, like you." The room seemed to stop breathing. The faint hum of electricity faded into silence. Yuki whispered, "You must be mistaken." But even as she said it, she knew he wasn't. Ishikawa continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Greater than, since that night, I've been hearing things during my rounds. Footsteps on the 7th floor when no one's there. And sometimes, laughter. A girl's laughter." He wiped sweat from his brow. "Greater than, you should leave this place. Miss, this building, it's not right. It keeps the dead." He stood up abruptly, clearly wanting to leave. At the door, he turned back and said, "Greater than, if you ever hear knocking on the window during the rain, don't open it. And no matter what you see, don't answer when it calls your name." Then he was gone. That afternoon, Yuki went downstairs to find him again. But the new guard at the desk said, "Greater than, Ishikawa? He quit yesterday. Had an accident while checking the top floor. Fell from the stairwell." Yuki felt her stomach drop. "Greater than, he fell?" The man nodded. "Greater than, Police said it was an accident. Poor guy. When Yuki returned to her room, she noticed the newspaper slipped under her door. On the back page, a small headline read, "Greater than, security guard found dead, fell from 7th floor balcony." She stared at the accompanying photo, the building, shot from the street. And there, faint but visible, on the window of room 703, a blood-red handprint. Chapter 12. The Locked Door. Yuki woke to a soft click 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 at the front door. When she tried the knob, it didn't turn. The metal was slick, icy. She twisted harder, nothing. The bolt had jammed from the outside. She called her landlord, no signal. She tried the police, call failed. Her phone showed no service. Even the router light was dark. It was as if room 703 had been cut loose from the rest of the city. The air inside thickened. The wallpaper smelled of mold and wet metal. She switched on the television for company, only static hissed across the screen. Then, through the static, a voice stuttered in broken syllables. "Greater than, you, Ki, see it now." The image flickered. For half a second a woman in a white dress appeared on screen, long hair plastered to her face. Eyes wide, mouth opening soundlessly. Yuki recognized her, Arai Miyu. Panic surged. She snatched the remote, but the TV shut itself off. The reflection on the black screen showed the window behind her, where 5 new wet handprints gleamed faintly. Still dripping. She grabbed a towel and rubbed frantically. The marks only spread, forming the shape of a face pressed against the other side of the glass. A mouth curved into a grin. She dropped the towel and collapsed. Back to the wall. From somewhere close came a new sound. Slap, slap, the tread of bare. Wet feet moving across the floorboards. "Stop," she whispered. The footsteps paused, then continued. Slower, closer. A metallic creak drew her eyes to the front door. The handle trembled. Someone was trying to unlock it from the hall. "Help, please," she screamed. No answer, only the gentle, rhythmic tap 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 on the window behind her. "Greater than, that door won't open," a voice murmured sweetly. "The window is still open, Yuki." She froze. The voice was familiar. It sounded exactly like her own. The light bulb flickered once, twice, then died. Darkness flooded the room. Whispers bloomed all around her, many voices. Men, women, children, overlapping in a soft tide. "Greater than, come out, Yuki. It's cold here, but quiet. Your turn now." She covered her ears, sobbing. But above the chorus she heard one more voice, clear, trembling, identical to hers, screaming from somewhere inside the dark apartment. It was calling her name. Chapter 13. The Letter. The rain hadn't stopped in days. Yuki sat curled in a corner, wrapped in her blanket. The candle beside her burned low. Every few seconds, water dripped from the ceiling, slow, steady, deliberate. Plink, plink, plink. She held out her hand to catch one of the drops. It was pink, faintly red. It smelled like blood. Her eyes drifted upward. On the ceiling above her bed was a handprint, pale and slick, with crimson water dripping from its fingertips. "Please," she whispered, trembling, "I just want to go home. Please stop." And then came the reply, soft, almost gentle. "Greater than, home? What about them?" Her head jerked up. "Who?" No answer. Only silence and the sound of water sliding down the walls, leaving behind trails shaped like hundreds of hands, reaching down toward her. She stumbled to the closet, desperate to pack her things. When she yanked open the drawer, a folded sheet of paper fell out, stained, yellowed, edges frayed by moisture. It looked decades old. Yuki unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was uneven, trembling, written by someone in fear. "Greater than, if you were reading this, leave. This room doesn't belong to the living anymore. Don't answer the voice behind the window, it isn't her. He won't let anyone leave." The last lines were smeared with either tears or blood. She could barely read the faint words scrawled at the bottom. "Greater than, the handprints are warnings, not invitations." Yuki's breath caught. She flipped the page over. There was a second message, written later, in a different hand, almost carved into the paper. Greater than Shinjuku, the next room. The words echoed in her head. Shinjuku, the next room? Did that mean the curse had moved to another apartment? Another victim? Her phone flickered to life. She typed Shinjuku death apartment into the search bar. But before she could hit enter, the screen went black. In its reflection, for an instant, she saw a pale face beside hers, long hair, dark eyes, lips moving without sound. She screamed and threw the phone. The lights flared once, then died. In the darkness, the letter on the floor began to blur. Ink ran down the page, forming new words in red, as if written by an invisible hand. Greater than, the door is open now. Yuki. Her gaze shot toward the entryway. The door, sealed shut for days, was slowly opening. Beyond it, the hallway was utterly black. And in that blackness, a tall, thin silhouette waited, motionless. From the threshold, a stream of water slid into the room. It wasn't coming in. It was flowing out. Chapter 14. The Last Night of Rain. That night, the rain came harder than ever before. It beat against the windows in endless sheets, the sound like hands slapping glass from every direction. Lightning split the sky, bleaching the walls of room 703 in white flashes. Yuki sat on the floor, the letter beside her, the open door yawning into the corridor's darkness. For a long time, nothing moved. Then, tap, tap, tap. The sound came again. 3 slow knocks on the window. She turned toward it. The curtain swayed slightly in the draft. Her voice cracked. Greater than, stop it. Please, stop. The knocking grew louder. The glass shuddered. A hairline crack spread across it. Then another, until thin lines webbed the pane-like veins beneath skin. A single black drop leaked from the largest crack. It slid down, thick, sticky. When it hit the floor, it left a dark red smear. Her scream caught in her throat. The crack widened. Water gushed through, not clear water, but something heavy and dark. Then, from inside the window, a hand pushed through. Skin gray, fingers long, dripping. It gripped the frame, and another hand followed. Then shoulders, a head. A woman climbed out of the glass as if it were water. Hair hung in strains, eyes sunken, mouth trembling. She whispered. Greater than, Yuki. Yuki backed away until her shoulders hit the wall. Greater than, Miyu. The woman smiled. It was wrong, too wide, too broken. Behind her, dozens of hands pressed against the window, each one clawing, pushing, pulling themselves through. Bodies began to emerge, sliding out as if the glass were birthing them. The air filled with the smell of rain and rot. Yuki ran to the door. It slammed shut in her face. When she turned back, the room was full of shapes, wet, shivering figures, their faces blurred by dripping hair. Some crawled, some stood. All looked at her. The thunder rolled. The flickering light showed their eyes, empty holes, glistening with water. In the center of them stood Miyu. Her face was calm now, almost sad. Greater than, I didn't want you to die, she said softly. But this place never lets anyone leave. She reached out, her cold hand pressing against Yuki's chest. The chill pierced straight into Yuki's heart. Her breath stopped. Everything went silent. The storm, the knocking, the voices, all faded into a distant hum. The last thing she saw was the window sealing itself again, smooth and perfect, as if it had never been broken. When morning came, the rain finally ended. Room 703 was empty. Only the faint scent of wet metal and mold remained. On the window, countless handprints overlapped each other, new, old, faded, fresh. And at the very bottom, a small, delicate one still glistened, water dripping from its fingertips. Yuki's handprint. Chapter 15. The final handprint. 3 days after the storm, the rain finally stopped. Gray clouds hung low over Meguro, and the entire building at 7-3 Shimo Street was sealed off with police tape. Neighbors gathered in silence as investigators entered and left, carrying sealed plastic bags. The report was brief. Resident missing, presumed dead. Room 703 locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry. No body recovered. When police forced the door open, they found the room flooded ankle-deep in water. The source was unclear. Pipes were dry, no leak. Yet the water was tinged faintly pink. Every surface, walls, floor, ceiling, was covered in handprints. Hundreds of them, layered over one another. Some small and delicate, some large, twisted, distorted, all pointing inward, toward the center of the room. In the middle lay a single phone, still recording. The battery was nearly dead. On the screen was a video file, timestamped 3:11 a.m., June 24th. The footage began shakily. Yuki was sitting on the floor, her hair wet, her voice trembling. Greater than, if anyone finds this, please, don't stay here. There's something in the water. In the mirrors. In the glass. They don't leave. She turned the camera toward the window. The glass was fogged, streaked with water. Behind it, a faint white shape moved. As the image sharpened, a hand pressed against the glass, then another, then dozens more. Overlapping, pushing forward. The rain outside grew louder until it drowned everything else. Yuki whispered one last thing, barely audible. Greater than, it's not calling us, it's warning us. A flash of lightning lit up the room. For a single frame, a figure stood behind her, hair dripping, face blank, eyes black and hollow. Then the screen froze. The last sound captured was 3 slow knocks. Tap, tap, tap. When investigators reviewed the footage, the lights in the viewing room flickered. The file corrupted immediately afterward. Only one frame remained, a still image of the window. And on the glass, clear, recent, glistening wet, was a new handprint. Small and delicate, the water still running down in thin streams. Beneath it, on the wooden frame, written faintly in red letters, were the final words. Greater than, not a call. A warning. They sealed room 703 years ago. Yet every rainy season, lights still flicker in that empty apartment. And a faint handprint appears on the window, dripping softly down the glass. Maybe it's a warning. Maybe it's an echo. Or maybe, it's waiting for the next name to answer when it calls.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.